All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to break down the Dolphins' schedule for 2024. So let's get into that. So the Dolphins, of course, they made the playoffs last year and they, got knocked down in the first round by the Kansas City Chiefs. So they're looking to, get back and, win a playoff game. I know I did a segment on a previous show about Mike McDaniel, organizing meetings at the 24th minute of, certain hours because that's how many years it's been since the Dolphins have won a playoff game. The last time they won a playoff game was when Peyton Manning, a young Peyton Manning, was playing because it was back in 2000. So, but this is the Dolphins' schedule. So we just talked about Trevor Lawrence earlier in the show, and they open up against Trevor Lawrence, the Dolphins do, and that's a home game for them. Now, it's interesting because I have the Dolphins ranked third in the division, but I feel like they do have an easier schedule than I feel like the Bills do, because yesterday I did the Bills schedule, and the Bills schedule is pretty difficult. I think, well, towards the end of the year, from Thanksgiving on, the Dolphins do have a tough schedule, but to start the year, I think is doable. So they got to stack up wins earlier in the season. So they open up against Jacksonville. You got two Florida teams going at it, two quarterbacks that most likely will be playing with new deals. Tua is probably going to get it at some point. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence has got his new deal. Tua's probably going to have his new deal. I think the Dolphins do win this game. I think early on in the season, the Dolphins were playing really well, but you looked at the level of competition, and they dropped 70 points on the Broncos when they were not good, and the Broncos did make a run later in the season. But yeah, the Dolphins, the only team that they beat with a winning record last year, I want to make sure I bring this up. The only team that they beat with a winning record last year was the Cowboys. So, again, that's a different year. This could be different this year, but I just, So I'm going to say that they win against the Jags. Then against the Bills did sweep the season series last year. I think they'll split, so I'll say the Dolphins win here to go 2-0. Then they go to Seattle, and I think that's going to be a tough game, that tough environment, but I don't know. I feel like that offense will travel, and I think that they will. I think they'll come away with the victory there. So they start off 3-0. It's a good start for them. Then they take on the Titans, and if you remember, late in the season last year, the Titans had that comeback. The Titans were down by 14 points, and there wasn't that. There was I think 4 minutes left, and they came back. They scored 2 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill got hurt in that game. And the Dolphins ended up losing that game. But I think they'll win this game here. So I'm going to say they go to 4. So now they're 4-0. Wow, a good start for them. Then they take on the Patriots in Foxborough. I think that's also a win. So now they're 5-0. And then they got a bye week. And now coming off the bye, they take on the Colts. And that could be an interesting game. I feel like that could go. I think the same thing with the Bills earlier in the season. I feel like this game, I think the Colts could win. But the Dolphins are coming off of a bye. So I think you got to factor that in. I'm going to say it's going to be close. But you know what? I'm going to say they're due for a loss at this point. I'm going to say the Colts actually upset them and win. So the Dolphins here, they'll drop to 5-1. Then they take on the Cardinals. They get back on the right track. They win that game. But then this is where it's not yet. But these next 2 games are tough against the Bills in Buffalo and the Rams. I'm going to say they lose to the Bills, and yeah, the Rams, high-powered offense. I think they lose to the Rams. I'm going to say the Rams win. So that's 3 losses now. Then they take on the Raiders at home. I think that should be a win. Patriots, I think, should be a win. But then this is where this is where the schedule gets really tough. So you take on the Packers, then you got the Jets twice, if they're playing well with Aaron Rodgers. You got the Texans, the 49ers, and the Browns. I'm going to say they do lose to the Packers. I'm going to say they split with the Jets. They lose to the Texans. 49ers, we'll see. The 49ers are going to come across country, but I'm going to say the 49ers win. And then at the Browns late in the season, with that defense, Myles Garrett, I feel like that's going to be a loss. And then I think, and you know what, the Jets-Dolphins game, Week 18, that could come down to, who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. So, but I'm going to say the Jets do split with them. So I got them losing to the Jets once, the Bills once, the Browns, the 49ers, the Texans, the Colts. So, yeah, I got them, same thing as the Bills, like 11-6. And I think that's, what did they finish with last year? They do have, actually, no, the Rams, did I say the Rams? The Rams, the Bills once, the Jets once. 11-6, 10-7, around there. I know I had them ranked third, but I still think they're going to finish with a good record. I don't think it's not like they're not going to. But again, injuries could happen. So, but I actually just want to double check what they finished with last year. And they finished, so yeah, of course the Bills did win last year. And that was, so they both the Bills and the Dolphins both finished at 11-6. So I got them finishing around the same records as last year, except the Bills had the tiebreaker because they swept the season series. But yeah, the Dolphins are still going to be good. I think they'll beat up on some of the bad teams that they have on their schedule, and that's what's going to make everyone fall in love with them. Like, oh man, this, but I think their true test is late in the season, from week 13 to week 18. That's going to be what defines their season. And they do have some tough games from week 1, to week 12, but that stretch from Thanksgiving, when they play the Packers, to week 18. Because you got the Texans, you got the 49ers in there, you got the Jets twice, who I think are going to be good, and we're going to do their schedule tomorrow. That's going to show me if the Dolphins are legit or not, is that stretch right there. Now, I think they'll still get their 10, 11 wins because they have so much talent on this team. And I do think, despite not winning a playoff game his first 2 seasons, I think Mike McDaniel is a good coach. But this is a team that's got to show me something. They did deal with a lot of injuries last year on defense. Tyreek Hill got hurt late in the season. But, against some of these better teams, they don't have the Ravens and they don't have the Chiefs on their schedule, but they do have the Texans. They got the Bills twice. You got the Niners. Show me something. Show me that you could beat these teams. And if you can't, I'm not going to take you seriously. I still think that I do think this is a good team, despite what I just said, but you got to beat the elite teams. And I think the Texans are going to be an elite team this year. The Bills, I think they are another team that's gone through a lot of changes. The Dolphins and the Bills had to, cut ties with players. And we'll see how they stack up against each other. That's what it comes down to. And is Mike McDaniel's motivation going to play a factor? They haven't won a playoff game since 2000. Are they going to be able to do it this year? We'll have to wait and see. And it's most likely going to be with Tua looking for a new deal. Is he going to have it at that point? I think so. Tyreek Hill's also looking for a new deal as well. So we'll see if he gets that. But, yeah, I think 10, 11 wins for the Dolphins. I think that's fair. I feel like for the most part I've been fair. I think there's been some teams where maybe you could look at it and say that might be too low or too high, but I think for the most part I've been fair with what I've given most of the teams. But yeah, tomorrow we will do the Jets schedule. And I'm looking forward to that because, I know I had that controversial take of I think the Jets are the best team in the AFC East. So I'm going to show you why tomorrow when we go over their schedule. And then you could look back at it when it doesn't go right and say, what was this guy talking about? That he really thought the Jets were going to do good, but that'll be tomorrow. So yeah, 10-11 wins for the Dolphins. I think that's fair for them. Let me know what you guys think about that. How many games do you see the Dolphins winning in 2024? So we are going to take our third break of the show, and when we come back, we will talk about Dak Prescott and some possible destinations for him if he doesn't indeed leave the Cowboys. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.